The Bronze Age is a historical time period lasting from around 3300 to 1200 BCE that saw humans first making use of metal, with bronze weapons replacing those previously made of stone. By the 13th century BCE, the major empires around the Mediterranean were the Hittites in Anatolia, the Egyptians to the south, and the Assyrians to the east. These three powers coexisted in a perpetual state of war readiness, glowering at each other from inside their respective boundaries. Yet it was an entirely unexpected new wave of invaders who were to upset these empires and contribute to the end of the Bronze Age. These were the Sea Peoples. The Sea Peoples were first identified by modern history in the 1870s, when a French Egyptologist named Gaston Maspero pinpointed a conglomeration of waterborne invading tribes as being the primary cause of the collapse of the Bronze Age. It was Maspero who gave them the name Sea People. His entire theory was based on a series of relief inscriptions near the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. The origins of the Sea People are not certain. They were apparently an alliance of several groups, possibly including the Phrygians, Indo-Europeans from the west coast of the Black Sea, who went on to occupy Anatolia after the disappearance of the Hittites. A contemporary Egyptian text said the following about them: "They made a conspiracy in their islands. They laid their hands upon the lands to the very circuit of the earth, their hearts confident and trusting. Our plans will succeed." In addition to the wall reliefs, the Sea Peoples were mentioned in the records left by two Egyptian pharaohs, Merneptah and Rameses III. They both claim to have been invaded by these people, Merneptah in the 5th year of his reign, equating to 1207 BCE, and Ramses in the 8th year of his rulership, that being 1177 BCE. Both of these pharaohs mention the names of some of the invading tribes. Merneptah mentions the Shardana, Shekelesh, Luka, Teresh, and Ekwesh, while Ramses lists the Shardana, Shekelesh, Jeker, Denyen, Weshesh, and Peliset. That makes 9 different tribal groups, but there may have been more. Very little is known beyond these names to identify where these people came from. However, the Peliset have been identified with the Palestinians, who, according to the Bible, inhabited what became Israel. Some early Egyptologists believe the tribes came from such western islands as Sicily and Sardinia, while others asserted that they came from the opposite direction, the islands of the eastern Mediterranean. Largely based on linguistic clues in the names of the tribes mentioned by the two pharaohs, modern researchers are in almost universal agreement that the Sea Peoples originated in the western Mediterranean. A connection has been made between Shardana and Sardinia and between Shekelesh and Sicily. It is believed that these two tribes were the original travelers, with other tribes being conquered and incorporated as they invaded one land after another. One of the tribes that both Merneptah and Ramses mentioned as invading them, the Shardana, appears in previous Egyptian writings. They are listed as fighting as mercenaries, both on the side of the Egyptians and the Hittites in the most important clash between those two empires, the Battle of Kadesh in May of 1274 BCE. The Ramses account also provides the only written record of the Sea People's other offensive actions. The record states, "No country could stand before their arms. Hatti, Kode, Karshemish, Arsawa, and Alashia. They were cut off. A camp was set up in one place in Amor. They desolated its people and its land, like that which has never come into being." The first mention in this account, the Hatti, we know as the Hittites. The Sea People's invasion of the Hittite Empire was so devastating that by 1200 BCE, the empire was no more. This created a power vacuum in the Middle East that was to be filled by the rivals and neighbors of the Hittites, the Assyrians. From ancient Egyptian reliefs, we learn that the various tribes who made up the Sea Peoples wore a common costume and wielded similar weaponry, suggesting that they had a common culture. They wore a simple tunic under which was a kilt, similar to that worn by Aegean warriors. Some reliefs represent very colorful clothing among the Sea People, with red, white, blue, and green featuring prominently. This, too, is reminiscent of the Aegeans. It appears that Sea People warriors either went barefoot or wore light sandals. Helmets, some with horns attached, were worn as body armor, ranging from full bronze to leather. Reliefs show Sea People warriors carrying medium to large round shields, some of which had bronze bosses attached. With these shields to protect themselves, they were able to launch spears and javelins at the enemy, and then close in for the kill with daggers and maces. Reliefs of land battles between the Egyptians and Sea Peoples show that the military organization of the invaders was similar to the defenders. The Sea Peoples used chariots that were of a similar design to those of the Egyptians. Interestingly, though, Sea People chariot crews appear to have been armed only with spears and lances, unlike the Egyptian charioteers who preferred the bow and arrow. Sea People fighting forces appear to have been highly organized, with even reiterating troops being depicted in reliefs as maintaining rank order. The organization suggests that they had a system of military leadership. The coordination that the various Sea People tribes were able to carry out clearly indicates that each of them had warrior chiefs and sub-chiefs. Sea battle reliefs depicting Sea People captives show a few of them wearing special lion or fish-shaped manacles, worn to represent the subjugation to the pharaoh. Scholars believe these were the leaders of the Sea Peoples. In 1177 BCE, the Sea Peoples set their sights on the Egyptian Empire, now under the rule of Ramses III. They swept south both by land and sea, while a fleet of warships sailed down the Mediterranean coastline. A host of warriors marched through Syria and into Palestine, accompanied by the women and children in clumsy ox carts. In what would be the last great display of Egypt's imperial might, Ramses led his army to confront the invaders on his northeastern border. He succeeded in trapping the ships of the invaders as they attempted to land troops at the mouth of the Nile and destroyed their fleet. Then, the Egyptian force shattered the army of the enemy in a bloody land battle. The Egyptians also stood firm against the Sea People's waterborne invasion. Around 1176, the invaders threatened the Nile Delta. Ramses had anticipated such an attack and laid a plan to counter it. His ships allowed the sleek vessels of the Sea Peoples, with their bird-headed prows and sterns, to enter the mouth of the Nile. Then, the trap was sprung. The Egyptian galleys hemmed in the invaders near the shore, making easy targets for a hail of arrows from the pharaoh's archers on the beach. The Sea Peoples were caught off guard. Egyptian reliefs of the battle show the enemy vessels with sails furled and oars shipped. Bearing down on their prey, the Egyptian crewmen loosed their arrows with deadly effect. For their part, the Sea Peoples relied mainly on swords and pikes, short-range weapons that were ideal for raiding along the coast, but proved to be of little use here. Soon, their vessels were being caught with grappling hooks and overturned, and the rout was on. Survivors were rounded up on shore, with many of them being led off to their death. An Egyptian chronicle recorded, "Those who entered the river mouths were like birds snared in the net. Their leaders were carried off and slain. They were thrown down and pinioned." Even though Ramses had fended off the Sea People's invasion of Egypt, these savage invaders had turned the Middle East upside down. The Hittite Empire had disappeared. Flexing its newfound muscle, Assyria had then emerged as a dominant power. The Assyrians seized Egypt's possessions in Syria and Palestine. With its trade routes constricted and in some cases completely cut off, Egypt no longer had a source of income from abroad. The once great kingdom now faced a drawn-out descent into corruption, usurpation, and near anarchy. The decline and fall of the major Mediterranean empires that had played out by the middle of the 12th century BCE brought the end of the Bronze Age. While some historians see the invasions of the Sea Peoples as the primary cause of the collapse of the Bronze Age, it was just one of several factors that came together to form a perfect storm of circumstances that led to its demise. Among them was climate change, which brought extreme droughts and subsequent famine. There were also an unusually high number of earthquakes, causing death and destruction on a huge scale. Civil wars and internal upheaval within the Middle Eastern empires were other factors that contributed to their decline. Political instability leading to the disruption of international trade also resulted in economic upheaval. On top of all of this came the invasion of the Sea Peoples. While the Sea People invasions were devastating, especially to the Hittites, it should be kept in mind that both of their attempts to overthrow the Egyptians were failures. According to the Egyptian records, those who weren't killed in the land and sea battles were resettled within the Egyptian Empire. Some of them were also settled around Palestine. So, it's not as if the Sea Peoples conquered the Egyptians in the way they had the Hittites. It was actually quite the opposite, and they were either absorbed into the Egyptian Empire or managed to resettle in their own areas. The collapse of the Bronze Age empires left a power vacuum that was eventually filled by new powers with more modern types of government. The old monarchical empires that had relied on a strong central power base gave way to new types of government, such as the Greek city-states. Technology also evolved as iron came to replace bronze as the new currency of power.